Thanks, Sarah, and thanks, Catherine, for the presentation as well. I think that was a really great scene setter in terms of understanding how these reporting codes fit into the overall thing that we're trying to achieve here, which is to instigate improved ESG and performance. PERC, it's great to have PERC here. The InFact project has been working closely with PERC, especially over the last year or so. And they've been involved with lots of our discussions and understanding the roles that Crisco could play here. So PERC is Europe's very own reporting standard for mineral resources and reserves, last updated in 2017. And it's particularly good to have PERC here because in the 2020 Crisco AGM, PERC was asked to start to make progress or take the lead on producing a template, if you like, or a prototype for new reporting codes which include enhanced ESG reporting and including additional guidance on considering these factors. So I think I understand from Ed that might be ready by quite soon, actually, March or April this year even. So we're all really looking forward to seeing that and learning how we all need to change to be able to fit into these excellent new templates. So Sarah, thanks, and let's hear some more from Ed.
Great, thank you very much for that, John. So, yeah, just to highlight to everybody, if you want to see the full response from PERC, just go to the website and click on the PERC button there, and you'll be able to see where Ed and the PERC team have completed their input in terms of what PERC have been up to. But just building on what John has said there, I'd like to welcome to the stage, as it were, the fantastic Ed's side. So, Ed, if you want to come off mute. And yeah, PERC have been working really hard on a broader update, which of course integrates ESG within that. PERC's not the first to do this. Of course, there's been lots of learning from the fantastic South Africans, and we'll be hearing from them a little bit later. But Ed, do you want to tell us a bit more about what PERC have been up to, and also, I guess, the timeline for changes that we can expect to see?
Okay, thanks a lot, and thanks everyone for joining this session. I just think before I start talking about PERC, because I realize there may be people on this call who have no idea about the resource reporting codes. And just to say, when we're referring to Crisco, that's the Committee for International Resource Reporting Standards, which is a grouping of 16 national bodies around the world, including the likes of JORC, and we've got KCMI and MPI GM on this panel here. So you can go to the Crisco website to find out more about that. But in 2006, what's called the Crisco International Reporting Template was produced, which was sort of a common basis, which new members of Crisco then used as the basis of their reporting codes. And that has been updated in 2013 and in 2019. So if you like, the Crisco template provides a kind of common thread for all 16 of the Crisco members, and one of the most important things for those of us working in it is the shared definitions of terms like mineral resources and mineral reserves. So for people who from the ESG background who aren't as familiar with the codes, I'd recommend, Crisco is sort of the international umbrella, and then we have 16 different groups under those. And as already mentioned, PERC is the European one, which originally started as something called the IMM reporting code back in 1991. And the first PERC template was in 2009, and that's updated approximately on a 4-year cycle. And in preparation for today, I was actually looking back on my notes, and my first contact with Catherine McCullum was in 2017 when she emailed us saying, well, you've just updated the PERC standard, do you have any plans for incorporating social license and stuff? So, but obviously lots of people were aware of the issues of environmental, social and governance arising. And I mean, although the existing codes and standards mention environmental and social impact and considerations and so forth, but obviously it's become of increasing importance to everyone around the place. And then we had started discussions with Catherine, and then Sarah, yourself, the conference you had, I think you had one at the JOLSOC end of 2019, and then a conference early in lockdown last year, our first experience of a Zoom conference on responsible raw materials. And so there's obviously been lots of discussions going on, and Catherine and Sarah have provided our link to a lot of the people on this call, in that they've been working with other bodies. And as John mentioned at the Crisco AGM last September, because we'd sort of started work on this, we were asked to sort of, if you like, go ahead with updating the PERC reporting standard to show one example of how extra guidance could be incorporated. And the first step in our update was to realign the PERC standard, which had been last issued in 2017, with the 2019 Crisco template. And then we have kind of a list of things that have accumulated over the last 4 years. And obviously one of the important ones was environmental social governance. So, and with assistance from Catherine and Sarah, and also correspondence with Teresa in South Africa, who was the lead, has really led the way with the SAM ESG guidelines. So we're all, if you like, all the international bodies are kind of trying to learn from one another, and if you like, we kind of leapfrog along. So the idea would be, when we issue the PERC reporting standard, before it can be adopted by PERC, it has to be shared anyway with the other national organizations, and there would be a chance for additional comment then. But we thought the opportunity came, because the INFACT project finishing off, that we could have this international discussion now and share ideas, and perhaps discuss one or two of the items we've come on that have are still under discussion, let's say, so we can take international input before deciding ourselves in PERC on what we'll put in.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Ed. And thank you also for that summary with regards to Crisco being that umbrella body that helps to bind together and allow each of the different codes and standards from around the world, I guess, to learn from one another. And as you said, everybody updates their codes and standards in their own time. So rather than there being big updates with everybody together, getting that sort of leapfrog process happening across the world. So with regards to PERC, Ed, and specifically focusing in on the ESG side, what are some of the main updates that we're seeing, or main changes, I guess, that we're seeing coming in there with regards to ESG?
Yeah. Okay, I think there's two main. Well, in the Crisco template, section 13, which was brought in, which was environmental. So we've kind of focused on that, which was already mentioning environmental and social aspects. And the main change we would be considering making is firstly to expand section 13 and retitle it environmental, social and governance, and put additional guidance in there. But another, and there's a corresponding in most of the standards, we have what's referred to as Table 1, which is a checklist of items that the people writing the report should consider. So the corresponding section in Table 1 would also be expanded to sort of highlight the kind of ESG aspects that competent person should take into account. But one other issue that particularly with the input from Catherine and the INFACT project, and it's something I myself have often had difficulty, is that we have what we term the modifying factors in the codes, which, if you like, are considerations that have to be taken into account when we consider sort of geologically what's in the ground, which we would refer to as the mineral resource, when we wish to convert that into what we could economically extract, which we would term mineral reserves, or for the Australians, ore reserves. But that's where we would apply considerations like the prices and the costs and everything. And there have always been the concept that environmental, social and legal and governmental aspects would be part of the modified factors. So we're really, in the update, we'll be expanding on the fact just that ESG modified factors need to be taken into account, but right from the exploration stage. And I mean, having started in exploration myself, I remember some of my first jobs were going to farmers in the Irish Midlands asking for permission to site a drill hole. So usually the first step, if you do have a mine, eventually is some geologist appearing on the ground, taking samples or asking permission to drill a drill hole. And probably, because of the greater population density in Europe and the fact that we've got lots of different jurisdictions, I think, as the INFACT project has highlighted, there's a lot of variety and different views on mining. Even though a lot of the European countries have historically had important mining industries, the current generation aren't as familiar with those. Yeah, so the other change in the codes would be saying that you have to consider these aspects right from the exploration stage. It's that they're relevant there.
Brilliant. So I guess that there are some key items within the existing standard in terms of the framework of it, the structure of it, that we're seeing big updates coming through, but then also that move to say, actually, you need to consider ESG right from those very early stages. Just with regards to that, Ed, so of course you were mentioning the European countries. So PERC, and we can all see it from your background, stands for the Pan-European Reserves and Resources Reporting Committee. So PERC, of course, tries to bring together all of those different European nations. How easy or difficult is it to actually update PERC compared to perhaps some of the other codes or standards around the world?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think you're always. I mean, what I should point out too, and to a lot of people attending, all of us in Crisco and PERC, and I think JORC, most are doing this voluntarily on our own time, because we're all volunteer-run organisations, and PERC, as you see from there's 6 logos behind me. We're a grouping of 6 professional organizations, but the way we go about the update, we have a separate standard update committee where interested parties can join who aren't necessarily full members of the PERC committee. But I think, as always in a lot of these things, it takes 1 or 2 people to drive these forward, and Steve Henley has been our key lead on this, going through lots of different iterations and taking your comments. And really, I mean, I think the difficulty, I think, is getting people to respond in a timely way. That, often when you finally get around to publish it, people say, oh, I never looked at that email 2 years ago where you were sending me an early draft to comment on, and now I want to complain about this, that, and the other. So I would encourage people, if like, I know JORC are probably going to talk about their update, but JORC are running a survey at the moment. So if you're interested in JORC, now's your time to make comments about all those things that have been annoying you in the last 8 years.
I'm sure the Australians are going to love you for that comment there, Ed. Brilliant. So I think, I mean, with that, so as you mentioned, actually the update to PERC is actually fairly advanced now, but is there anything that the international community can do to help PERC, or have you got any requests that you would like to send out to the world?
Yeah, so we sort of got a fairly complete draft ready at the moment, which is going through this review by the Standard Update Committee, and that should be finished next month. And we would envisage that in March we would be circulating to the other Crisco NROs and to the other PERC members as well for sort of final checks. And we have our AGM scheduled for May, so we would like sometime in April to sort of formally approve it by the trustees and put it to the AGM for adoption. But obviously that's dependent on not having negative feedback from the other Crisco NROs. But one issue that has arisen in our discussion, well, there's probably 2 issues that perhaps might like to discuss more broadly at the end of the talk if we have. But one is the terminology, just governmental. Governmental is the word that is currently used in most of the standards, as it is in the Crisco template. And where we've suggested changing that to governance, some people have said, well, no, hang on a minute, governance has a special legal meaning and, is different from governmental. So, I would kind of be interested in people's feedback on, whether we should use governance or governmental, or use both with some guidance. And, and the other one is, as I already touched on, I often have, having worked as a consultant geologist for, since about 2004, often with clients, I have difficulty saying, well, you have to consider what we term the modifying factors, environmental, social aspects. quite early on, because figure 1 in the Crisco template and the codes gives the impression modifying factors are only relevant when you go from resources to reserves. But if you actually read the guidance, you will see that modifying factors need to be taken into account with mineral resources. So we have discussed a bit, but we're probably not going to take the step. But a general question for everyone is, are you happy with figure 1, or do you think figure 1 should somehow indicate that you have to look at modifying factors, and in particular ESG, before even reporting exploration results? And you perhaps should figure 1, for instance, have an ESG umbrella around it? But that's just to stimulate some discussion. We're probably not going to go that step, but other people might like to take the lead on that. And I would point out that figure 1 actually is tried and trusted, because it was first introduced in the JORC code of 1989, I think, correct, and also table 1 was also appeared in JORC 1989 with a checklist of only 11 items, and it's now well over 100 items.
So we're not overcomplicating things in the slightest. Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for that, Ed.